For as far back as I can remember, I have always been a hip-hop fan. As a kid into my teenage years, I bumped all the mainstream and popular rap everyone had listened to a million times. The J. Coles, the Kanyes, the Drakes, all of them. But you could only listen to the hits of yesteryear so much before the need for change beckoned you. Around 2020 is when I began to diversify my rap playlist, adding lesser known, smaller, and independent artists in my growing music arsenal. It was also around this time I set my eyes on a particular bizarre subgenre that would change the way I look at all music, let alone rap. The experimental hip-hop subgenre was something that I heard in murmurs and rumbles on the internet, as well as a friend of mine taking a liking to this music. I knew virtually nothing about it aside from its sometimes less than tasteful sounds and hard to get into fan bases, but I knew I could only listen to the same 100 old rap songs so many times before something needs to switch. So with a passion for expanding my very particular music taste, I felt it to be time to dip my toe into rap of the weirder type. Not to mention, I had lived and adored albums from artists I already am familiar with that dabbled in this subgenre. Albums like Because the Internet, Yeezus, and even Mad Villainy intrigued me deeply, but still felt too safe and familiar for me to truly go head first. So with the intent to understand, the album that I landed upon as my first intro to the experimental subgenre of hip-hop was the 2016 experimental fan favorite, Atrocity Exhibition by Danny Brown. I was thrilled to dive in, yet upon giving it a listen straight through, my opinion of it was negative. I didn't like it. The album everyone was raving about, it just felt like it couldn't be the same record. I wasn't a fan of his voice. I didn't like how off the beat was, how some of the instrumentation felt messy and disorganized. I just didn't like it.
Ain't it funny how it happens?
Or so I thought. Let's take a step back. Like with anything, to better understand experimental rap, it definitely helps to first understand what makes it experimental. But even that isn't so easily explained. See, this subgenre is known for its boundary-pushing, divertive, and unconventional style. So is all of hip-hop. Despite the genre of rap and R&B recently being stated to be the most listened to genre in the US, the genre began as a way to divert from conventional norms and stick it to the system. Most classic rap albums in some way, shape, or form began building the stepping stones for what would become experimental hip-hop. It wasn't until experimental rappers like MF Doom, De La Soul, and Kool Keith came around and transformed into some of the first examples we'd see of artists who were abnormal in the already abnormal genre. So what exactly is it that makes experimental hip-hop different than any other unconventional rap subgenre? I believe the differences lie in the innovative production and bizarre yet meaningful lyricism. Let me explain. Yet another strange subgenre of hip-hop that gets mistaken as experimental is horrorcore, a dark and twisted corner of the genre that birthed classic artists such as the Insane Clown Posse, Tech Nine, the Ghetto Boys, and even a lot of Eminem's old stuff. The defining features of horrorcore is of course the subject matter. The lyrics tend to be deliberately violent, grim, and meant to unsettle its listeners. One of the most infamous tracks that comes to mind when I think of horrorcore is Immortal Technique's Dancing with the Devil. Feel free to check this song out for yourself, but I do want to give you an aggressive trigger warning as this song discusses how life on the streets can turn even the nicest kid into a monster. I won't even be able to talk about majority of the lyrics without this video getting age restricted, so again, do listen at your own caution. But many of the songs in this subgenre maintain a horror movie-like gimmick with each and every song. As I mentioned before, some of the most popular Eminem tracks also fall in this genre, such as Stan, the story of a psychopathic stalker that obsesses over Eminem and ultimately dooms himself as well as his pregnant wife into an early wet grave, is the type of stories told in this genre. While experimental hip-hop lyrics on the other hand are different, unlike concept album outliers such as Maps by Billy Woods, which is about traveling via public transport, most of the lyrical content within this genre is based on raw emotion, real, raw, and uncensored. All of the unfiltered thoughts that would often remain in the minds of these artists crawl out from between their ears and stain the ground where they stand. While it's not new in the slightest to bare your soul on a track, the way artists such as Earl Sweatshirt, Brockhampton, and Injury Reserve form their bars in a manner that cuts deep yet can be interpreted as 1,000 different things is astounding. He's sometimes even rapping these transformative messages in ciphered, nonsensical sounding lyrics, and other times satirically condemning the very tropes of rap as a whole, making fun of the common braggadocious style that so many rappers use now. On the other side of the coin, very serious messages can be expressed better in this subgenre than really any other genre. And speaking of Injury Reserve, their 2021 album by the name of By the Time I Get to Phoenix is deeply personal on an almost uncomfortable level. I could probably make an entire video just about the album alone. The album came right after the pandemic when the world was at a very bleak low, with little hope being hard to come across. The album would already be a depressing and reflective album if it was just about mortality and fear of impending apocalypse, but unfortunately, shortly before the album was released, one of the members, Stepa J. Groggs, passed away. The final track, called By Storm, is one of the most difficult rap songs I've ever listened to. Lyrics such as,
I see my anchors break down, I don't know how to hold that. There's only so much two arms can truly hold that. The show must go on, the show must go.
They truly feel like mumblings to comfort oneself, and it makes this whole project absolutely gut-wrenching. The album is probably a lot more relatable now, more than it was when it was released, due to the very real problems going on currently in the world and in America. Commenter Atomic Open House on the aforementioned Injury Reserve song states, I'm really bad at associating emotions to events and experiences, to the point where I don't exhibit any change in the face of loss and tragedy. But music always had the ability to do that for me, and I depend on music to help me understand emotions and express myself. This is the first song I've ever heard that has totally captured something specific as specific as leaving something or someone behind. And to build upon that point, I truly believe that experimental rap's most powerful musical weapon would be their unique production. Its ability to pull emotions from any listener, whether it be fear, discomfort, or euphoria, is why it stands alone alongside an ocean of similar sounding genres. And one of the other unique examples of how production can define a genre and even a generation of rap would be something like cloud rap. A subgenre that birthed most of modern mumble rappers came from the once niche concept that exploded in popularity in recent years. Rappers like A$AP Rocky and Lil B pioneered this dreamlike, hazy, floaty soundscape known from the genre. A lot of cloud rap songs sound like they could be ripped straight from a spacey, psychedelic trip, lifting its listeners to another state of existence. This alone is enough to draw familiar, nostalgic emotions from listeners, but unlike cloud rap, experimental production stems from the brash and abrasive world of industrial music and noise with hints of rock and metal. Artists such as Death Grips often use the dirtiest of guitar thrashes backed by loud, almost primitive blast beat production, followed by ever so slightly delayed delivery of bars, all in an intense mix that makes for very purposeful dissonance that experimental rap aims for. And on the other side of the coin, we have guys like Arm & Hammer have some of the most interesting sounds I've heard in music. The use of glitches, clips, reversing music, and strange obscure sound bites make for an uneasy listening experience that really transport you to wherever he wants you to be. It's this chopped, twisted, and screwed manipulation of the samples that highlight the complex process behind these bizarre sampled beats. Arm & Hammer, which is a duo consisting of Billy Woods and Elucid, have an album titled We Buy Diabetic Test Strips, which is a masterclass on understanding this subversive production style. Songs like Landline really caught my ear with its otherworldly, hellish introduction, and this is no accident, as the producer of that song in particular is the very person who changed my view on everything regarding experimental rap. And this takes me back to my story. Upon barely giving Atrocity Exhibition a cohesive listen and vowing to never touch the subgenre again, I went on with my life. But after Atrocity, I noticed a particular artist popping up on my feed, as well as my recommended music on Spotify, by the name of JPEGMAFIA. Again, I didn't know anything about this guy, aside from him being more of an independent internet rapper and being quite beloved within his subgenre. In a passive scroll, I've seen glimpses and bits and pieces about his sometimes extreme views and what I thought to be hateful messages in his songs, so to say I was apprehensive to listen to him would be an understatement. But after a while, I felt like I couldn't escape him, and not to mention a close friend of mine named Justin, he gave me that extra little push, so I decided to give this bizarre corner of rap one last chance, diving into the absurd 2018 record Veteran. Something to know about JPEGMAFIA is that his art is very much tethered to him. To understand his music better, you must understand the artist behind it. And JPEG, or Peggy as he is also known, is a very complex character. Barrington Hendrix, otherwise known as JPEGMAFIA, has had quite the life before his sudden rise to one of the top heavy hitters of the subgenre. Growing up for most of his youth in Brooklyn, then moving down south, he had, in his own words, no stability in his childhood.
You know, when you move around a lot, you see a lot of different things, and you have a different perspective than most normal people, you know. A lot of things that people do normally, I had to like figure it out on my own, because no one really taught me. I didn't really have much of a family, so not really having anybody to teach you how to exist in an adult world, I had to kind of just go out there and learn by trial and error.
Yet living in the South made him very aware of one thing, and that was his race. Facing quite a bit of racism by that time, he entered his senior year in high school, in which, because of, in his own words, him being poor and not really having a goal in life, he decided to join the Air Force. He served a duty tour in Iraq, spent time in Kuwait, Germany, Japan, and North Africa before he was honorably discharged for speaking out against some of his higher-ups, claiming things such as racism, sexism, and sociopathy as all things that he witnessed while being in the military, and to this day his stance on disliking his time there despite being a veteran still stands. It was during his time stationed all over the world where he began to pick up producing music. He learned to produce prior to joining the military, previously going under the name of Devin Hendrix, where he would make the aforementioned cloud rap and vaporwave music, so it's kind of cool how they overlap. Making a impressive first mixtape called Ghost Tape, but we will get further into his discography later. After being discharged, he would begin to publish albums containing songs that held everything from political to racial messages, all laced with hatred. But it felt necessary. With an ongoing problem of black people getting killed in America due to police brutality, he felt it to be excruciatingly relevant to let his message be heard. Now, before I continue, something I want to mention is that Peggy, just like any other artist in the genre, is far from perfect. He has done and said loads of things not everyone would agree on, especially early in his career, but his message of injustice remains centerfold. Most artists in the genre are just people who have gone through things like every one of us, and very often they can even flat out not be good people, but I think it makes their art that much more fascinating. Something about this genre attracts broken, damaged people to come together to create something very powerful and very meaningful and bigger than they are. But getting back to JPEG, around 19-20 years old is when he would do his first live show after releasing a politically charged first album called Black Ben Carson, and admit that he'd do things at these shows just to stir up and anger the opposite race crowd.
I used to try to have hostile shows on purpose because of where I was. So every show was like a fight or an argument or just some kind of hostility, to the point where I got used to it.
But soon after his self-destructive behaviors, anger and the feelings of social and racial injustice would begin to fade into his work. Veteran was one of his first albums that began to really cement him as a political powerhouse in this genre. And I do have to say, it was initially a difficult listen for me. The same feelings I had with Atrocity Exhibition came flooding back, but in a completely different way. The album felt incohesive, hard to follow, but most importantly, quite extreme with its disdain-filled lyrics. But after understanding Peggy and where these lyrics come from, the music began to morph. Amidst the chaos, amidst the anger, something would come forth, like a crack of sunlight piercing through dark and menacing storm clouds. And I began to see the same thing on his 2019 third studio album, All My Heroes Are Cornballs, as well. What JPEG showed me more than any other artist up to this point is understanding the weight behind the concept over the music.
Rap could become like just so much more interesting. You know what I mean? It's fine now. I just think it could be way weirder. I like that shit. It's you know, you can't even like listen to it for real, like as a song, but as an idea, it's great. I love it personally, but it's great. I would like to see more shit like just risk taking.
The idea alone truly changed everything for me, because there was plenty of music I did enjoy and plenty I thought was cool, but I wouldn't find myself really bumping it in the car. But that's not why it was made, such as Death Grips. I truly could not get with a lot of their music, but I still respect and more importantly understand what their goal was when making the music. And to build upon that epiphany, something that also dawned on me whilst listening to JPEG's discography is the overlooked power of a re-listen. The messy intros and rapid beat switches can disorient you and make you forget parts that you may have enjoyed, but sometimes it feels better to stick through the intentional chaos to get to the rainbow after the storm. This is why I found re-listening is crucial to the genre and understanding that, as well as the concept behind it, it is the goal of understanding the subgenre as a whole. And with that, I felt the intimidating walls of this unhinged corner of rap fall down and made complete sense. I returned to Atrocity Exhibition shortly after running through Peggy's discography and enjoyed it on a deeper level. I cannot stress enough how fun diving into music like this is, and the cherry on top was that the two powerhouses of the genre and the two people this video is most about collaborated on one of the coolest projects of 2023 called Scaring the Hose. Scaring the Hose felt like a sweltering peak of my growing interest in this subgenre, as well as the normalization of experimental rap as a whole. Scaring the Hose presents a colorful and cinematic reintroduction to the two rappers in both of their biggest projects yet. I believe this album to be an easy introduction to the subgenre for anyone who still may be on the fence. It's good enough to enjoy, but still keeps you on your toes. Controlled chaos at its finest, ladies and gentlemen, and truly a full circle moment in my musical journey. I'm not sure if I said this publicly on my channel yet, but in regards to what I tend to make videos on, it has to be something that I not only enjoy, but something I have enough passion to really talk about for hours. Something that makes me look at the world differently, and something that makes me appreciate what I once overlooked. And with this subgenre, it opened up a whole world for me where I'd discover rappers all the time I would have never in a million years come across had I stayed in the mainstream rap bubble. And lastly, to you, the viewer. Regardless if you are a die-hard fan of this stuff or someone who doesn't even listen to rap, let alone the experimental variant, I humbly and very gently encourage you to take a step outside of that music familiarity bubble, as you never know what exactly you may find yourself bopping your head to. As for my experience, I've come to learn that it takes an open mind above everything to get a better understanding of the nuance and bizarre beauty of weird rap. Thank you. And again, I very much appreciate you for making it to the end of the video. It truly means a lot, and it would even mean more if you left a like on this video. It really does help me out quite a bit, as well as a subscription if you like my style of making videos and would like to see more of my content. There's also a new hype feature. If you really appreciated this video, you can go ahead and add some points to it, and it builds up to hype or something. I'm not too completely sure how it works, but I would very much appreciate that. And lastly, big thanks to 5 for providing the soundtrack essentially to this video. I used pretty much all of his beats. I linked his YouTube, I linked his Spotify. A very good friend of mine, he makes beats, and he's actually the one who kind of got me into a lot of this genre of music. So yeah, big shout out again, and thank you, the viewer, very much. I appreciate you, and I will see you when I do.